Manhattan, Upper East Side. That November night changed everything. Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling Pharmaceuticals worth $500 million, was about to marry Preston Whitmore III, Wall Street's golden boy with connections to every power broker in New York. The $400,000 wedding at the Plaza was planned to perfection, but 30 seconds of security footage destroyed it all. Through her phone screen, Victoria watched Preston tear apart with savage fury the drawing that her 6-year-old daughter Lily had made for Michael, the single dad janitor who'd been cleaning their penthouse for 3 years. The colored pieces fell like Lily's tears as Preston fed them into the garbage disposal. "That loser doesn't deserve anything from you," he'd shouted. The wedding was canceled that very night, but the real story began when Victoria discovered that Michael Chen, the humble janitor who worked 3 jobs to support his son, was hiding a past that would change 3 destinies forever. Victoria Sterling's empire stretched across Manhattan's skyline. At 41, widowed for 5 years, she'd transformed the grief of losing her husband David in a car accident on the FDR Drive into an obsession with work. Sterling Pharmaceuticals dominated the biotech market, but Victoria's real treasure was Lily, the daughter David had left her. The penthouse on 5th Avenue overlooking Central Park testified to her success, but it was Lily's laughter that filled those luxurious spaces with real life. And behind that childhood joy was an unexpected presence. Michael Chen, 35, the building's janitor who'd become an unlikely friend to the little girl over 3 years. That Thursday afternoon, Victoria was in her corner office at One World Trade when her phone buzzed. The home security system flagged unusual activity. Since Preston Whitmore had entered her life 8 months earlier, Victoria had gotten into the habit of checking the cameras, not from distrust, but to see Lily during the day. The screen showed her a scene that froze her blood. In the main living room, Lily was crying desperately while Preston, immaculate in his $5,000 Tom Ford suit, held the remains of a colorful drawing. The man was methodically tearing each piece with a coldness Victoria had never seen in him. The camera's audio captured every cruel word. Preston was shouting that Michael was just a janitor, a nobody, that he didn't deserve Lily's affection, that he'd be banned from the penthouse after the wedding. The child was begging, explaining it was a birthday gift made with love. Michael's son Tommy had helped her color it, but Preston threw everything into the garbage disposal, turning it on while Lily screamed as if her soul was being torn apart. The nanny, Mrs. Rodriguez, rushed in at that moment, drawn by the screams. The scene that followed was even more revealing. Preston turned on her with venom, calling her an enabler of inappropriate relationships, and threatening to fire her along with that pathetic janitor, once he was officially Lily's stepfather. Mrs. Rodriguez gathered Lily in her arms, ignoring Preston's tirade, focusing only on comforting the child. Victoria closed the video conference with Japanese investors without even excusing herself. In 5 minutes, she was in her Tesla, driving home with a cold fury she hadn't felt in years. During the drive, she thought about the 8 months with Preston. She'd met him at a charity gala at the Met, had been charmed by his Harvard pedigree and apparent affection for Lily. Now she understood it had all been an act. The private elevator opened onto the penthouse. The scene that greeted her was surreal in its apparent normalcy. Preston was scrolling through his phone on the Italian leather sofa as if nothing had happened. Lily was locked in her room. And Michael? Victoria noticed Michael was in the kitchen, on his knees trying desperately to retrieve some fragments of the drawing from the disposal. The confrontation that followed was brief and definitive. Victoria never raised her voice, but each word cut like a blade. The wedding was cancelled. Preston had to leave the penthouse immediately. The man's threats, his hysterical shouting about ruined reputations, about the scandal in their social circle, didn't shake Victoria. She had one answer: the security footage. Preston paled, He knew that video would destroy him on Wall Street, where image was everything. He gathered his things and left, throwing out one last curse about the crazy family that preferred a minimum-wage loser to a real gentleman. When the elevator closed, Victoria ran to Lily. She found her curled up on her bed, still shaking with sobs. The conversation that followed was simple and profound. Lily confessed she loved Michael and Tommy like family, that Preston had always scared her, that she'd made that drawing because Michael was the only person besides Mommy who made her feel safe since Daddy died. Victoria looked at her daughter and saw what she'd ignored for months. The love she'd been seeking for Lily had always been there, in the quiet man who brought Lily little origami animals he made during his breaks, who knew every fear and dream of the child, who'd spent 3 years being a silent friend to a lonely little girl. The next morning brought revelations that would change everything. Victoria had spent the night reflecting, observing 4 years of memories with new eyes. Michael had always been there, in the background, never intrusive but always present. He was the one who'd taught Lily to tie her shoes when she was struggling, who'd share his lunch with her when she was sad, who knew the name of every stuffed animal and the story behind each toy. Victoria called Michael to her home office after dropping Lily at school. The man entered with his usual quiet dignity, but Victoria noticed for the first time the exhaustion in his shoulders, the careful mending on his uniform, and something deeper, an old sadness he'd learned to hide. The conversation that followed unveiled a story Victoria never would have imagined. Michael wasn't just a janitor by choice. He'd been Dr. Michael Chen, a promising surgeon at Mount Sinai Hospital. He'd had a wife, Sarah, who died of breast cancer 4 years ago, leaving him with Tommy, then only 2 years old. Sarah's illness had devoured everything. Their savings for experimental treatments, his career abandoned to care for her, their house sold to pay for one last attempt at MD Anderson in Houston. It hadn't been enough. Sarah died in his arms, and with her died a part of Michael. The medical bills had destroyed him financially. Unable to afford childcare and needing flexible hours to care for Tommy, he'd taken the janitor job that let him bring his son to work sometimes. He cleaned offices at night, drove Uber on weekends, did whatever it took to keep a roof over Tommy's head. Victoria listened in silence, understanding finally so many small gestures she'd noticed over the years. The way Michael looked at Lily when the child wasn't watching, with a paternal love mixed with pain. How he saved every drawing she gave him, treating them like treasures. How sometimes, late at night, when he thought no one was around, she'd heard him teaching Tommy the same songs David used to sing to Lily. The private investigator Victoria discreetly hired confirmed everything and added heartbreaking details. Michael lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens, sleeping on the couch so Tommy could have the bedroom. He ate 1 meal a day to save money, sent what little extra he had to a foundation researching pediatric cancer. He had no social life, nothing beyond Tommy and the small acts of kindness he showed to others. But there was more. The investigator discovered that Michael had been blacklisted from medicine after refusing to falsify records for a powerful hospital board member whose son had caused a fatal accident while drunk. Michael had chosen integrity over his career, and the retaliation had been swift and complete. Victoria began observing Michael with completely new eyes. He wasn't just the efficient, silent janitor. He was a man who'd known the deepest pain and had chosen to transform that pain into quiet kindness for others. He was strength hidden under apparent humility, dignity in the face of daily humiliation. One evening, as Michael helped Lily with her homework, he always made time despite his exhaustion, Victoria watched from the doorway. Lily had drawn a family tree and, with the innocence of children, had put Michael and Tommy next to her and Mommy. Michael had gently corrected her, explaining he was just a friend who worked in the building. But Lily had insisted that in her heart they were family. It was at that moment Victoria understood. She'd been looking for a father for Lily in all the wrong places, among Wall Street titans, tech billionaires, men of her social standing. The father Lily had chosen had always been there, without pretense, without glamour, just with pure, unconditional love. The media storm after the broken engagement was immediate and vicious. The tabloids went wild while Preston fed the fire with carefully placed rumors about Victoria's mental instability and inappropriate attachments to the help. But in the Fifth Avenue penthouse, far from the noise, something profound was growing. The confrontation with Preston and his father, Preston Whitmore Jr., senior partner at a white shoe law firm, lasted exactly 5 minutes. They wanted $10 million for breach of promise and reputational damage, but the video of the torn drawing ended all claims. Preston left throwing out one last barb. No respectable man would ever accept being second to a janitor. That evening, Michael asked to speak with Victoria privately. With Manhattan glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, he confessed something that changed everything. He'd been in love with her for 2 years, but had buried those feelings, knowing they were impossible. He spoke of the shame of being just the janitor, the pain of seeing her with Preston, the secret joy when the engagement ended. Victoria sat in stunned silence for a long moment. Then, with a vulnerability that surprised her, she admitted that in recent weeks she'd started seeing Michael not as her building's janitor, but as the extraordinary man he was. She confessed that her heart, frozen since David's death, had started beating again watching him with Lily, seeing his quiet strength, witnessing his dignity. The days that followed were a delicate dance of unspoken feelings, but children see truth where adults see complications. One evening, Lily simply took both their hands and joined them together. "There," she said with a smile. "Now we're a real family." From that moment, hiding the relationship became impossible. The paparazzi photographed them together taking Lily to school. The headlines exploded. Pharma heiress and the janitor? From billions to brooms. But in the penthouse, protected by Lily's love and their own growing bond, Victoria and Michael built something real. The media scandal exceeded all predictions. Michael became the tabloid's favorite target, with stories dissecting his fall from surgeon to janitor with cruel glee. Old photos from his hospital days were compared mercilessly with current images. Sarah's death was twisted and used to paint him as a man desperate for a second chance at someone else's expense. The most devastating article came from an interview Preston orchestrated with the New York Post. He painted Michael as a calculating gold digger who'd used his son to get close to Lily, then manipulated the child to get to the mother. The lies were interwoven with enough truth to seem credible. Lily began suffering at her elite private school.
Enjoying the story? Give it a little like, and don't forget to subscribe. Now then, let's carry on.
Parents, fed by gossip, instructed their children to stay away from the girl whose mother chose the janitor over Preston Whitmore. The child came home in tears, asking why people were so cruel to Michael, who was the kindest person in the world. Victoria was furious, ready to use all her power to destroy anyone who hurt her family. But it was Michael who stopped her, with the wisdom of someone who'd already lost everything once. Revenge would only fuel the fire. They had to resist with dignity, protect Lily, and let time reveal the truth. But the situation exploded when Michael's former hospital chief, Dr. Richard Hartman, the same board member whose son Michael had refused to cover for, saw an opportunity. Armed with a team of lawyers, he threatened to sue Michael for defamation if he ever tried to return to medicine, and hinted he had information that would destroy any chance of Michael and Victoria being together. Preston, scenting blood in the water, allied with Hartman. Together they launched a coordinated campaign. Preston used his Wall Street connections to pressure Victoria's board of directors, suggesting her poor judgment made her unfit to lead. Hartman spread rumors in medical circles that Michael had been fired for malpractice, not principles. One night, Michael broke. He packed his few belongings, wrote 2 letters, one for Victoria, one for Lily, and prepared to disappear with Tommy. He couldn't let his presence destroy the lives of the 2 people he'd come to love more than life itself. But as he headed for the door with Tommy sleeping in his arms, he found Lily in the hallway in her pajamas. The child had sensed everything with that infallible instinct children have. The scene that followed broke and remade Michael's heart. Lily clung to him crying, begging him not to leave, saying it didn't matter what people said, that real love was stronger than lies. Victoria, awakened by the commotion, found them all in the hallway. She read the letters Michael had left and tore them up in front of him. That night they made a decision. They would fight together. They wouldn't give in to blackmail and lies. True love deserved to be defended. Victoria's private investigator worked through the night. By dawn, he had a file that changed everything. Hartman's son had killed a family of 3 in his drunk driving accident. Michael had the original blood tests Hartman had tried to suppress. Preston had been sued for sexual harassment 3 times, with sealed settlements. There was also evidence of insider trading that would end his Wall Street career. The evidence was presented privately to Hartman and Preston. The message was clear: withdraw all threats and disappear, or everything goes public. Hartman signed immediately. Preston resisted until Victoria showed him what would happen to his career if the SEC received certain documents. The press conference Victoria called at the Plaza shocked New York. Before 200 journalists, she told Michael Chen's real story. Not the gold-digging janitor, but the surgeon who'd sacrificed everything for his dying wife. The man who'd chosen integrity over career. The father, working 3 jobs to give his son a future. The gentle soul who'd become a second father to her daughter when she needed one most. The announcement of the Sarah Chen Foundation for Pediatric Cancer Research, with an initial endowment of $50 million, completely changed the narrative. Michael wasn't the man after the billionaire's money. He was the man who inspired the billionaire to use her money to save lives. But the moment that went viral worldwide was when Victoria did something unprecedented. She got down on one knee in front of the cameras. The public proposal wasn't theatrical. It was a declaration of war against society's hypocrisy. Victoria Sterling, one of America's most powerful women, was kneeling before a janitor, declaring that true love knows no social boundaries. Michael was watching from the penthouse with Lily and Tommy. His answer, given over speakerphone to the entire room, moved everyone. He accepted, but with conditions. No lavish wedding, no media circus. He wanted to return to medicine if possible, would never be anyone's trophy husband. He wanted to be loved for who he was, not transformed into what society expected. The months that followed were a daily battle. Paparazzi besieged the building. The gossip wouldn't stop. Lily continued facing comments at school, but something was changing. The first families saved by the foundation began speaking out. Former colleagues of Michael's from Mount Sinai wrote open letters about the brilliant surgeon whose integrity had cost him everything. Slowly, the narrative reversed. Michael wasn't the janitor who'd seduced the billionaire. He was the man who'd inspired the billionaire to become a better person. Photos of him teaching Lily and Tommy together, of him still cleaning the building despite being engaged to Victoria, of him volunteering at free clinics on weekends, told a story of authentic character that touched hearts. The death blow to the gossips came from an unexpected source. David Sterling's mother, Lily's grandmother, gave an exclusive interview. She declared that her son, from heaven, blessed this union. That Michael was the father David would have chosen for Lily. That true love doesn't replace, but multiplies, doesn't erase the past, but builds the future. With the blessing of David's family, the last walls crumbled. Even Manhattan's elite, always ready to judge, had to admit there was something extraordinarily pure in this love story, born from loss and grown through sacrifice. The wedding took place on a spring morning at a small church in Michael's hometown in Minnesota. Just 30 guests, real family, true friends, people who'd seen beyond appearances. No photographers, no social media, just pure love. Victoria wore her mother's simple ivory dress. Michael had traded his janitor's uniform for a simple navy suit, but it was Lily and Tommy who stole the show, as flower girl and ring bearer, inseparable as they'd become over the months. During the ceremony, when the minister asked if anyone had objections, Lily raised her hand. Silence fell like a curtain. The child stood, walked to the altar, and pulled out a new drawing from her basket. It showed 5 figures: Victoria, Michael, herself, Tommy, and a bright figure in the clouds, David. In a clear voice, Lily declared that this day she wasn't just gaining a new daddy and brother, but was witnessing that true love exists, that families are built with heart, not blood, and that her daddy in heaven was smiling seeing Mommy and Michael happy. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. The drawing, this new one replacing the one Preston had destroyed, became the symbol of a family rebuilt from the ashes of pain. During the reception in the church garden, news arrived that made the day even more special. The Sarah Chen Foundation had just received FDA approval for a revolutionary pediatric cancer treatment. 20 children were already in trials. It was as if Sarah lived in every life being saved. But the biggest surprise came a year later. Victoria, at 43, discovered she was pregnant. Doctors called it unlikely, given her age. Victoria and Michael saw it as a gift from David and Sarah, 2 parents in heaven blessing new life. Little Emma Sarah was born on a snowy December night, with Lily and Tommy holding Victoria's hands during delivery. When Michael held his daughter for the first time, he cried as he hadn't cried since Sarah's death. But these were different tears, not of pain, but of infinite gratitude for this unexpected gift. 2 years later, their brownstone in Brooklyn, they'd left the Manhattan penthouse for something more real, hosted a scene that seemed painted by Norman Rockwell. Lily, now 11, was teaching Tommy, 9, to play chess, while Victoria, pregnant again with their second child together, worked from home. Michael had returned to medicine, working at a community clinic in the Bronx, where he could make a real difference. The sterling fortune hadn't disappeared. It had been transformed. The foundation had saved over 100 children in 3 years. Every family saved became part of a network of love and support. Michael still insisted on working, on earning his way, on being more than Victoria Sterling's husband. Preston Whitmore had been indicted for insider trading and fled to Switzerland. Dr. Hartman had lost his medical license when Michael's evidence surfaced, but in the Brooklyn brownstone, their names were never mentioned, not from bitterness, but because they were irrelevant to the love story being written every day. One autumn evening, as the leaves turned gold in Prospect Park, Michael found Victoria looking at an old album. There were pictures of David, of Sarah, moments from past lives. There was no sadness in her eyes, only gratitude. Michael wrapped his arms around her from behind, feeling the baby move in her belly. Lily and Tommy were in the backyard with Emma, their laughter filling the air. In that moment, Michael understood the deepest truth. Pain hadn't been erased. It had been transformed. Losses hadn't been forgotten. They had been honored with new life. The torn drawing had been the beginning of everything. From destruction had come creation. From cruelty had bloomed kindness. From appearance had emerged substance. A humble janitor and a broken billionaire had found in each other not just love, but redemption. When their 4th child was born, David Michael Jr., the family felt complete, or so they thought, until Tommy, now a teenager, asked if they could adopt his best friend whose parents had died, who was about to age out of foster care. The circle closed and reopened. Love didn't divide, it multiplied. Family didn't limit, it expanded. And in that Brooklyn brownstone, surrounded by love, hope, and the constant noise of children, Victoria and Michael proved that true wealth wasn't in bank accounts, but in the hearts beating around you. The last scene shows them all together for Lily's high school graduation. The young woman, headed to Harvard to study medicine, stands between her two fathers, the one in heaven she carries in her heart, and the one on earth who chose to love her as his own. Tommy, accepted to MIT, holds Emma and David Jr. Victoria, her hair now touched with silver, still runs her company, but from home, 3 days a week. Michael, recognized as one of Brooklyn's most dedicated doctors, looks at his family, impossible made possible by love. On the living room wall, framed as the most precious artwork, hangs Lily's drawing, the new one from the wedding day. 5 figures that became 6, then 7, now 8, plus 2 angels in the clouds. A family that shouldn't exist by any social standard, but that exists as proof that love recognizes no boundaries. Because in the end, the torn drawing hadn't been a tragedy, but a miracle in disguise. It had shown Preston's true nature, revealed Michael's golden heart, allowed Victoria to see beyond appearances. That moment of cruelty had generated a lifetime of kindness. And as the sun set over Brooklyn, painting the sky the colors of children's drawings, the Sterling Chen family proved to the world a simple but revolutionary truth. True love has no social class, no age, no conventions. It has only the courage of those who choose to love beyond any obstacle, who build cathedrals of affection on the ruins of pain, who understand that true nobility isn't in blue blood, but in the heart that beats for others. The torn drawing had been rebuilt, not with glue, but with love. Not identical to the original, but infinitely more beautiful, like life itself when it finds the courage to be reborn. Hit like if you believe true love transcends all social barriers. Comment with the moment that touched your heart the most. Share with those who need to know that from ashes can rise the purest happiness. Subscribe for more stories that prove destiny hides in the simplest gestures, like a torn drawing that becomes the beginning of a miracle.